Welcome into another edition of Gas. I am Gresh. He is Jason Anik.
You were playing everybody and we're winning the game last night.
The head coach is fighting people on the sideline.
What do you got for me?
I know you're a part of Tight Pants Society.
No fucking play is that a gimme, right?
Well, after a week away because I needed to flee the country, I know that sounds way worse than it is. We're back with another edition of Gas. I'm Gresh. Posted up like Wayne Newton on the Las Vegas Strip is Jason Anik. How are you?
Do you like Wayne Newton?
I like hearing the stories about Wayne Newton. If you've ever heard any of those, like him and Tom Jones are apparently like human tripods.
So I like your tan. Teed it up a little bit in the Caribbean. Yes, some beautiful shots you sent us, bro.
Bermuda was pretty nice. It always is. Had a very nice downtime with the family. Re-entry Monday was not good. I was completely distracted. I had to do a radio show. There was stuff picking up from my wife's business because we were away from that for a week. So yeah, re-entry Monday was rough. I was really zombied out. And you know what it is, Jay? I normally am not one of those where I get like depressed or down after I leave the end of a good vacation. But this was one where like when we were flying back and you're just over the Atlantic and you're just like, damn, this is 2 hours away. It's so awesome. We had a great time. I played a lot of golf, some of it good, some of it bad. The weather, it is hurricane season there. So there was a little more rain than normal. And my God, we were one of the pro courses in Bermuda. There's Port Royal, which we played hot as balls. And the other one is the Mid-Ocean Club. Now, Mid-Ocean, I think used to do, it was like whenever they would have the winner of like the winner of the majors, whatever they used to call that, like the whatever of golf, they would have it at Mid-Ocean Club. And we played a hole and then they brought us in because of lightning. We finally got back out. We had like a 9:52 tee time. We got back out 11:30, played 3 holes, and we're on the 4th hole at Mid-Ocean. And we're near the green. And the rain started to come in over the water. It's only about a 350-yard hole, but we're near the green, and you look back, and all you see is a wall of rain. It's the weirdest thing during hurricane season because a lot of times it'll rain overnight. You have no idea. But this wall of water, we could hear it was just coming towards us, and we're like, oh, man, what are we going to do? So we tried to wait that out a little bit. My father-in-law and I at that point tapped out, and we were like, look, let's go try to get a refund, let's get the hell out of here. The boys really wanted to play it, especially my oldest Connor, who's a caddy, because, pro course, he wants to try to put up a number. I think he ended up shooting like 81 or something like that. And what was a very disjointed round on what is a tough course. So it was weird to be there with rain. But look, for those who have never, my wife told me years ago, she's like, when we go, you're going to be blown away. If you've ever been to Hawaii or Maui, this is the East Coast version of it. That's the only thing that I can say. It's Caribbean. It's got pastel colors. But if you really enjoy Hawaii, you would love Bermuda. And this is not from their, travel council or anything like that. It was a much needed time. Like I needed the break. I was about to get ready to punch walls pretty soon.
Oh, you've been burning it day, night, double headers all day. And I'll say in terms of, my honeymoon was in Maui and I live in South Florida. So what am I doing having never been to Bermuda? I feel like my parents went there from Boston a decent amount when I was a kid because you just sort of bang it out. But some of those images you sent me, like, gosh, I keep trying to get back to Maui, and what I need to be doing is trying to get to Bermuda.
Yeah, I think it's a much shorter flight. I'll give you the hack in terms of flying there. And I think they do it out of, there's a couple of spots in, I think, Florida, but I know up here in the Northeast, they have Bermuda Air. And people think it's Bermuda Air, but it's Bermuda Air. They were awesome. There's people there to like check you in and things like that. Like, it's not like JetBlue where you're tagging it yourself, which I did last time we went to Bermuda. And you know what? It was crazy because I was the one who's having to handle it, checking everybody in, grabbing those things, making sure you put the shit on the right way. Nope, there were like adults there who handled it. It made it so easy. It's a nice hack. It is affordable. That's the other thing about Bermuda. You can blow your yearly salary in some of these places that you would stay. But if you're smart about it, you can find good places to go to. And there's a ton of like public beaches and things like that. Now, the water, depending on which kind of like area you go to, the water can eat you up. I don't know if you're a great swimmer or anything like that, or
but like Malcolm Jamal Warner just had something happen. So
bingo.
I can
Bingo.
play golf and look at the water on the golf course.
Yeah, I'll tell you, I did go in a couple of times. There was a place where we stayed where it was kind of like a cove area where it was ocean water, but it wasn't rocky or wavy. Boats would go through. They were like teaching kids how to parasail and stuff like that, right? So it was almost like easing into an ocean bath. It was kind of crazy. And you just like float in there. The water's so salty, even my big ass floats. There's that. I can't remember where it is over in the Middle East where they have, it's like the saltiest water in the world. Like, yeah, like you can throw like a brick in there and it'll float, which is it's wild. So anyway, no, all good, buddy. How are you as the king of the grappling world?
I'm good, man. So this is my 4th straight Wednesday coming to Vegas, which is kind of interesting, right? Everybody has their own life circumstances, but I have 2 young kids, and I'm not going to lie, I absolutely love Tuesday. Bye. I'm going to go to Vegas for a few days, but for those of you who haven't seen our show, it's a grappling league. It's a jiu-jitsu league, right? So this is week 4. This Wednesday, 30 matches every Wednesday. Next week's week 5, which is the final week of the regular season. The season champion, team champion will be determined next Wednesday night. And then the 8-man playoff bracket is September 10th. And then Canelo Crawford the 13th, which is all out here in Vegas. So yeah, tonight is PGF. Then tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., we will fly to Midway, Chicago to see my brother for UFC 319, which I'm all excited about. Bilal Muhammad, I believe, lives in Chicago. My younger brother, David, is coming to Chicago to go to the pay-per-view. So, yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah,
out of the basement comes the third Anik brother.
Well, and it's hilarious because we were going to have a camera crew with us. We are not going to have a camera crew anymore. We're doing some behind-the-scenes stuff. But my younger brother was like, no way. Like, I'm not. If there's a camera there, like my younger brother, we wouldn't see him in Chicago the whole weekend if we're trying to put a camera in his face. I'm telling you.
Wow, really?
He wants none of it. Yeah.
So he couldn't
a little bit of a different cat, but no, he doesn't want any of the.
I was going to say, so if you buzzed it like John and you two both walked around, he could have been the one asking the questions, but he wants nothing to do with it.
Exactly. And I will say, in terms of buzzing my hair, it's hilarious. The dirty boxing guys, they haven't come out and asked me, but they want me to shave my head. It's hilarious. It's like, I don't know what else to say. I'm not shaving my head. We went a little shorter, Gresh. I'm not taking my hat, but we're a little shorter. We trimmed up the flow a little bit.
No, it looks good on it looks good when you're doing your grappling work and are on camera. And of course, Dirty Boxing's got another event coming up around the corner, right? Have they set their next date?
Yeah, so August 29th in Miami, which I love. I live down there, which is great. But yeah, Jairzinho Rozenstruik versus Rob Perez, the first belt on the line for Dirty Boxing. The Dirty Boxing heavyweight strap will be on the line. But yeah, it's cool. A lot of UFC fighters or past UFC fighters on the card again. So I'm excited. Yeah, they booked. So August 29th is DBX3. I think they're going to back it up with DBX4 September 26th. They really want to roll out a lot of events. So
there is a big appetite in the combat sports world. And as we found out a couple of days ago, the UFC and the new Paramount group have reached a deal of $7.7 billion over 7 years to bring all events on CBS Paramount Plus. 13 numbered events every year, formerly the pay-per-views, are being simulcast on CBS in prime time. Now, just to pull back the curtain a little bit for those who don't understand why this is such a big deal, okay? In the world of television, there are your cable channels, but you have to have cable to be able to get them, obviously. I'm talking ESPN, USA Network, stuff like that. This is now a company paying UFC $1 billion+ a year to put these on over-the-air television on CBS. So for those who don't know, and I tell my kids this all the time, if you just want to get your local channels, have a TV, plug in the HD antenna in the back, and you'll pull in all of your local channels from your area. So you don't need cable. All you need is a television, power, a local CBS station, and a high-power antenna to be able to watch these events. Now, the money is what people are talking about. But what they've done is they've moved from being on cable to now being on over-the-air television. This puts the UFC closer to the NHL, to the NBA, to the NFL in getting their big events on what we would consider traditional over-the-air television on a major network. To me, that's why this is big, not just the money part of it, Jay.
Totally agree. I'm so glad that's the road you took it down. You know, I got plenty of people that want nothing to do with ESPN Plus. Okay. They want nothing to do with streaming services. I understand this is going to be streaming on CBS, but I know a lot of sports fans that don't watch any MMA except save maybe 1 or 2 pay-per-views a year, right? Some of these huge cards. But these same motherfuckers have every streaming service, right? They've watched every show, every season of every show, and they gobble all that stuff up. So I do believe some of these sports fans are absolutely going to gravitate more toward the UFC, and it's going to be part of their sort of routine in a way that it wasn't before, but it cannot be overstated. What you said about the big shows being on CBS, it's very difficult for me to wrap my head around the money, right? We could talk about fighter pay. We could talk about how much Canelo and Crawford are getting from TKO September 13th when they fight, with the Saudis behind it, right? So the fighter pay conversation is a different conversation. But a lot of these fighters are individual independent contractors. So my guess would be, there's certain, if I had a conversation with Bilal Muhammad, plenty of times where he's felt like the organization taking very good care of him. So I think it really does depend on the fighters, but it does give the UFC room. You can be sure some of this money will trickle down. Exactly how, I don't know.
Yeah, and, you know, like Cody's thrown in the chat that, you know, so a bar can have it on at 10 p.m. to close with no cover. I think that's a part of the reason why the UFC went to this model, Jay, because they were still getting a healthy amount of pay-per-view buys. Don't get me wrong, but there's no way you can tell me every bar in America, well, maybe not every bar, that's hyperbolic, but a lot of, you know, restaurants and bars in America, hey, somebody's got an ESPN login, you buy the pay-per-view, and you put it on all the TVs in the bar. That's not the essence of how that is supposed to work, but I'm sure there are a lot of people that are doing it. I also saw on Twitter, Stream East, you've served us well. That's basically where everybody would go to get the free pay-per-views. And I think that this is now, it puts a proper evaluation on the money piece of it, but it also now keeps from the thievery that I do believe was taking some money out of the UFC pockets.
I agree. And, you know, I just mentioned my little brother. There's not a chance my little brother up in Maine is buying these pay-per-views. He's not an MMA fan, but I promise you when it's on CBS, he'll be watching his big brother commentate, if nothing else, you know? So there's a lot of different individual components, you know? And so apparently I think Ariel Helwani said that John Jones they got the number up to 30 million for that fight, which is what he asked for. I guess the Saudis got in, and then he still sort of didn't want to do it. So if guys are talking about pay-per-view points in terms of their earnings, Tom Aspinall barking about, you know, where's the structure, you can be sure the bright men running the show are going to figure that out. And I believe you can be sure when Tom Aspinall makes that next walk, well, he's going to walk in 2025, but I assure you that the champions in 2026 will be taken care of by the promotion. Probably.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that if you're taking care of your top guys, then you really, you limit your risk of these fighters trying to unionize, really, at the end of the day. You know, you go back to, there's a very famous story. I know Hulk Hogan just passed away, but there's a very famous story in the wrestling world of, in the mid-'80s, Jesse Ventura tried to unionize the boys, right? And tried to get them to skip out on a big event. Vince McMahon would have to cave. They would be able to then negotiate benefits or whatever. Hulk Hogan went and stooged the conversation off to Vince McMahon, and then they turned around and fired Jesse Ventura. So they got the issue out of there. But the thing is that, you know, Hogan was taken care of as a top guy. So you could argue he was being selfish and not helping everybody else, or it was, hey, everybody made money along the way. You know, whenever they did the original Hulk Hogan figure, they put the Iron Sheik in there as well. And there's the legendary story of $80,000 went to the Iron Sheik for 1/4 of the sales of his LJN doll, because they put it in with Hogan, because Hogan's got to have somebody to beat up, right? So you're right in terms of the smart ones will kind of figure it out. But I also think now Dana White is in a way kind of boxed in a little bit, because now that this is public and out there, really the finances of UFC were always a clandestine operation. You had an idea, but you never really knew, right? And then you would see some of the fighter pay that would come out for the states that publish it, whether the UFC liked it or not. And then you start to see some of those numbers and you're like, wow, that, you know, for some of these fighters on the undercard, it feels light for a lot of people who are uneducated to the world. You know, and Cody just mentioned the lawsuits as well, you know, so there's a lot of reason. I don't want to say that the UFC got out of the pay-per-view game. I think what UFC did was they finally got to properly monetize their product that allowed them to move away from that model. And not for nothing, they're under the TKO banner, and WWE already did this experiment years ago. So there at least was a history of, how did the market react? How did the fans react? How did television react? They went through a lot of that stuff with WWE when they went away from a pay-per-view model. So for a guy like Nick Khan and Dana White, you put those guys together, they'll figure it out on a piece of paper. You're 1,000,000% right on that. It's just, how do they get there? And now they have to fight the fact that the agents and the fighters actually know the real dough, which we've never known before.
And, you know, it really, for me, having these types of conversations when I'm so close to it on an individual standpoint, right? My brother John, what he's talking to me about, frankly, is all the people at ESPN who he's built relationships with, doing a lot of the pre-fight shows, the post-fight shows, UFC Live, all these different things that those ESPN people that are coworkers, that are friends, right? What happens there, right? That's sort of what he thinks about. If you want to know the truth, I think about John and his future a little bit with a big deal like this, right? As his sort of manager or whatever I do for him. So there's a lot of different components to this. But one thing that John has taught me without question is John just focused on the day in front of him, right? You could be sure all John's focused on is delivering his best performance, UFC 319. We just talked, he's on his way to Chicago. So this, believe it or not, John and I barely scratched the surface on this stuff because he's just focused on making sure he keeps that seat.
Well, yeah, and I don't think there's, with all due respect to the people that are, you know, working on some of these fight nights and stuff, there's nobody that to me is even challenging him at this level. And that's just my, you know, professional broadcast opinion. The mix of John and Joe and DC in particular, I mean, that group is fantastic. Who knows what happens with Rogan at some point? I mean, you know, he's got enough money, he didn't have to do this shit. But like John and DC, you know that there's a special relationship there. And I think, you know, when you think of like Madden and Summerall, okay, and you think of the you know, like what was it Bob Costas and Doug Collins for a while? You know, I don't exactly, but when you think of the quote unquote
Marv Albert and the czar of the telestrator, Mike
yeah, there you
Fratello.
go. That's a good one. You know what, like the broadcast duos, right? If Rogan just woke up and said, F it, I don't want to do this anymore, and it's just John and DC, they have that kind of relationship. And I think you can kind of tell it already with those guys that if it were just those two, they would be able to handle it. And that's not, you know, shoving Rogan out or saying anything bad against Rogan. It's more of when you think of the traditional broadcast duos of the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and you think of UFC, Joe is in there. But to me, if it were John and DC, they would be iconic like those other duos in other sports.
I appreciate you saying that. I absolutely love it. They're super close on and off the sticks, and certainly a lot more real estate for John to operate when it's not a 3-man booth. A 2-man
no
booth
question
is certainly a 3-man booth. He can read his promos and he can get in and out, but there are plenty of times where in a 2-man booth, he'll maybe talk about the MMA a little more.
Well, and I think for products that, look, if you call it college football, some of the college football games like I do, you're running ads for the university just to fill time. But on a broadcast like that with UFC, I don't think people realize the amount of, they would call it traffic, right? In the media world, when they go to commercials, they call it traffic. There's a person in the traffic department that handles that. But that's also all of the stuff that John's got to get in for reads and things of that nature. And that's where the relationship with the floor manager comes into play, where let's say John has the card, someone's making a point, but the floor manager can set it up to where maybe they just go over and he puts a hand on each shoulder of, say, Rogan and DC, letting them know that John's got to read something. There's a lot of ways to be able to communicate without communicating so that he can get that stuff in. But it's a lot of traffic, promos here, promos there, read this. Here's your, DraftKings splat of the night, whatever the hell it is. There's a lot in there, let alone when the president shows up too.
Yeah. Well, but right? Experience and putting in the time and the hours, right? It's like John's a well-oiled machine at this point. I'm sure
organization. Your brother is very organized with all that stuff, and it just makes it a lot easier because you know where you're going next.
100%. He always talks about all the anxieties in the preparation. I've told this story over and over again, but once the clock strikes midnight on Friday night and his show is written and all the prep is done, he becomes a different person because all the prep is done, and now he sort of exhales and becomes more relaxed. And what it's taught me in preparing for some of these smaller shows that I do, the one thing I know when I show up to do Dirty Boxing or Professional Grappling Federation, I'm supremely prepared. I'm not suggesting that I can deliver like John. I'm trying every day to get better, but I know that I'm doing the work to put myself in the best position to do it because he's taught me how to do it.
And then a lot of times it comes out organically. There'll be things that you either didn't get in one segment that you could mention within a fight or something like that. And it's just, it becomes, it's not muscle memory, it's brain memory. And then you just, it's easier to, hey, I know this number, or I know this stat that I could work in right here. And it just happens. And that's how, but hey, one thing I do want to follow up on with this whole CBS Paramount Plus deal, it's now confirmed that the White House show is happening, and it's going to be on CBS, which is crazy to think about, that the UFC on a weekend where everybody has time to sit down if they want to is not only going to be on national television on a holiday like that, but it's going to be from the White House. I think just the curiosity factor, Jay, is going to cause a ton of people to just flip that on and check it out.
100%. And frankly, this was a 99% reality the moment I think Trump first uttered the words, or Dana first. You just know there's no bullshit with Dana White. Like, if it can happen, it can happen. And what we brought up, they did the Sphere, they'll do the White House, but it's just crazy. Like, imagine what John's thinking about. All right, well, I guess I'm going to the White House in 2026, if I'm healthy. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I think 100% is going to happen. And I think you are going to see fights. You are going to see, you talk about everybody wanted to get on UFC 300.
Bingo. That's what I was going to say. This will be the closest thing to that card of UFC 300 in my opinion.
It'll be above. It'll surpass it.
You think so?
Well, John Jones is training. Is it for the 30 million? No, he walked away from that. He's training because he wants to fight at the White House, if you ask me.
And will the number be the same? I mean, that's
a good question. It's a good question. There's so much money in this world, you have to think it will be.
But if he flaked on 30, that's why Dana White says, I can't put him in there. I can't trust him. That honestly, from your boss, because Dana White is the boss. And I know no one talks about it that way because they understand it's the whole, well, he could be in, he could be out. Maybe he's had issues, I can't believe that Dana White, out of one side of his mouth, talks about how John Jones is the greatest of all time, and then turns around in another respect and says, can't put him on that card. I can't trust the guy. Those are there are very few, like, that's almost Jerry Jones level of bullshit.
You know what though? I don't know. I mean,
Is that the fan versus the businessman?
Yeah, I think maybe. I mean, look, Dana White, I think it's an astute statement to make to maybe put a little pressure on Jones or to say something public. I understand your Jerry Jones comparison, and that's what's giving me pause a little bit because you changed my opinion with that a little bit. But I do think that Dana just sort of saying, look, it's all, almost a way of sort of saying to John, like, your number. I would probably put John Jones above McGregor in terms of, if you're asking me, if I get to pick one of those two to see, and I think you got a great chance. I think you get a great chance to see both. But
100%.
I think McGregor represents more risk than John Jones.
Well, I would say this, that the best fight that UFC can make, I think right now, relative to John Jones and where he's at this point, is obviously Aspinall. Now, Aspinall's got to be gone. He's got to keep the title. We don't need Jones and gone. Everybody wants to see Jones and Aspinall. And if he is training to come back for this, then I really do hope that is the case. And this doesn't get turned into, oh, well, Aspinall lost the title. I think people still want to see that fight, whether the title is involved or not. McGregor is kind of a novelty act in a way, right? It's like Black Sabbath doing their last performance, and then Ozzy shows up, right? You're like, holy shit, I never expected this. That's what that would be if all of a sudden McGregor walked down whatever aisle they would create at the White House. And the one thing about Conor McGregor is that he's better at than John Jones is finding different ways, good and bad, to keep his name out there. So to the average fan, that's the guy they're going to want to see, is McGregor. To, I think, the astute MMA fan, they want to see John Jones in there. And I think that's a very different distinction. I don't know if people yearn to see McGregor fight anymore. We yearn to still see, even though I've been one of the biggest critics of John Jones, I still want him in the octagon fighting the best guy he can.
Yep. And Cody brings up too, and we'll move on to baseball, but that some of the legal troubles represent risk for the organization. You can be sure, right? You don't know what's going to be happening in the court of law summertime next year. So.
Well, and now that UFC is under a publicly traded umbrella, whereas before Dana White was the decision maker on that, now there are going to be people above him who are going to be evaluating the level of risk with certain fighters now. So, that process is going to change. Again, just on the other side of the whole TKO group, WWE started to, there was a well-known wrestler who got a pretty big DUI. I think it was like 2 or 3 years ago, and it was like his third or fourth one. And no one had really picked up on it before, but then the media started sniffing around. You're a publicly traded company. You're held to a different standard now. You got to make it look like you have some teeth with some of the things that you do. And Dana White's never had a problem with that. It's just the whole next layer of scrutiny that is kind of going to come with everything. All right, let's get to the Red Sox. I also have something Red Sox to bring to you that I should have thrown in the notes here, but Red Sox beat the Astros 14-1. They end a 3-game skid against the wild card leading Houston. Houston's up 1.5 games in the wild card. Roman Anthony becomes the first guy since Ted Williams to record a game with 4 walks, 4 runs, and a home run. Sox are 10 games over 500 at 65-55. Trail the Jays 4.5 games in the East. Yanks are 6 games back. They got Houston. Then they're hosting the formerly known as the Florida Marlins. And then it's hosting Baltimore. And then they go to the Bronx next weekend. 10 of their next 14 are against the American League East. Where's your temperature still on these Red Sox?
I don't know if I have enough time to talk to you about the Red Sox. Quickly, I just want to ask you, Roman Anthony's contract. Do you have any quick thoughts on that?
It aligns with the organizational philosophy. I don't love
it's
it.
awesome. Why? Why don't you love it?
Because you're really putting the cart before the horse with the player. I also think it's dumb business from the player. Why
that's
are you?
A different conversation, no question
I get
about it. But that thing can be ripped up. But my point is you've locked up Crochet and Anthony to very reasonable deals. I like it. Go ahead.
I just wonder about the whole. What if they did this with Tristan Casas, and you had 140 million sunk into him when years ago people thought he could play? So now of course they did.
You don't even like Casas. That's a whole different conversation.
No. But what I'm saying is that it's the principle of young player comes up. We want the cost certainty. Let's buy out a couple of years of free agency and go get this player. That's my point, though, is that they did it with Roman Anthony when he came up in his first year. If the Red Sox did that with someone like Casas when he came up in his first year, because they had a boner for him when he came up too, and that's my whole cautionary thing. I think Roman Anthony is going to be okay, and the contract won't bite them in the ass. But now you understand what I'm talking about. They did it with a young player before they even really had 5 months of the guy in the big leagues, and then they went and rewarded him. What if they'd done that with Casas? That's my cautionary tale is if Anthony just proves to be an average guy, now you overpaid him in years where you didn't have to.
Slightly overpaid him. You don't have to be much better than above average for those dollars compared to what he could be getting as someone who people think very much is going to be a perennial all-star. They paid Christian Campbell as well, not as much, but even that is very reasonable dollars. So to me, and I like that investment. Dude, I believe in that kid. He's a little young. I'm glad they sent him back. I mean, they didn't pay Casas. They paid Campbell and Anthony and Crochet. And to me, I think Roman Anthony talks about, it's plenty of money. I think in a couple of years, he may want to rip that thing up. You know?
Yeah, well, I would rather see this organization do what you do in managing the salary cap in the NFL, right? So if I've got 6 years, let's say, or 5 years of Roman Anthony making no money but giving me massive production, then that's where I go buy the luxury for 5 years. That's the difference, is that the Red Sox don't want to do that. If you let Roman Anthony eat shit salary-wise for 5 years, which is what you do in Major League Baseball, but you had 4 years of locked-in certainty on your guy, Alex Bregman, that to me is the way to do it. Not pay a guy who's come up and had a hot 6 weeks and, good, we save money long-term down the road. You better hope he develops into your Alex Bregman.
That's a great point. And I'll tell you right now, if they don't lock up Bregman, I wouldn't agree with every word that I just said. Do you know what I'm saying? And my hope is, because I do believe Bregman genuinely believes in these guys, that, look, Roman Anthony wouldn't have been leaving anyway, but I do believe that they will work this out with Bregman, and maybe he will be that big expense. But in terms of the team, Gresh, right now, we took a week off, and it's amazing. Yeah. We talk every week about what a difference a week can make. And you joke with us about it being a roller coaster. And then we take 2 weeks off, right? And a lot of good happens in 2 weeks. But then last night before the game, I'm sitting here thinking they've lost 3 in a row. I'm thinking if they lose last night, Gresh is going to be sitting here with his arms crossed like roller coaster. But what's interesting is before I left Florida yesterday, Hard Rock bet, you can't play it in anywhere but Florida. I took every dollar in my account and I bet it on the Red Sox yesterday, which I don't normally do. Yeah, but last week or 2 weeks ago when we talked about Yankees and Red Sox, it's like I said this and I believe it, and maybe it's hyperbole, but the Red Sox have juice, bro. They have juice. And so when I see a team that's lost 3 straight, and I look at the pitching matchup or whatever it is, and both starters did pretty well last night, but I just had a feeling the Red Sox were going to get off the schneid, and I just really believe in the culture. And look, they're going to have to perform ultimately. And you look at some of the starters, right? I know Dustin May was good last night, but like Walker Buehler, Brian Bayo, Lucas Giolito, they're all such wild cards. But I think the ceiling can potentially be high. If any one of those 3 guys wants to be somewhat consistent, it can really plug a huge hole. And all 3 of them are showing signs of maybe being able to, Walker Buehler had a really good start out in San Diego recently. So I think there's some potential there. And so I guess what I'd say about this team is that when they're up against the wall, having lost 3 straight, I feel like we're going to get that best effort and they're going to win that game, where maybe I wouldn't have felt like that 5-6 weeks ago. And I do believe if they can get in the tournament, they got a great chance to make some noise.
Well, you mentioned the pitching staff, and that is supposed to be the one thing that that the general manager now here in Boston was supposed to be able to do. That's what he did with the Cubs. He built a pitching staff and built an organizational flow to the pitching staff. Now, I don't know how far along they are on that, but I think you really nailed something, Jay, when you mentioned, like, Bueller and Giolito and people like that, Brian Bayo. They're the essence of the roller coaster, right?
100%.
If they all hit, you're probably a 90-win team if they all hit. If not, then you're still kind of fighting it, obviously. But that's kind of the way they've now just built this thing, is that, hey, could be good, could be bad. We take our risk where we can. They've tried to lock in some of the young guys with the blessing of John Henry, because again, organizational philosophy on that end of it. But yeah, I think they have developed a little bit of an identity.
Yep.
I don't exactly know who the leader is, but I do believe right now they all believe in each other. That's also the steadiness of the manager. Have you heard that people have been chirping the Red Sox for cheating again?
No.
I love the look on your face. So in Houston, on one of the games on August 2nd, it was, right? Because I was away. Trevor Story was on second. The Houston pitcher drops the ball on the mound, creating a balk, because they thought they were stealing signs again, and he was worried about Story relaying signs. So they give him third base, right? Houston gets out of the inning, and when the pitcher's walking off the mound, the third base coach, I think his name is Kyle Gibson, says something, I guess, to the effect of, "Thanks for the free base. We didn't know the signs anyway." And the Houston pitcher got hot. Bench is empty. They were beefing a little bit, and then it kind of went from there. So you had Houston saying that basically the first and third base coaches were moving around too much and trying to see, like, grip on a ball and things like that, and then the signals. And it's the whole thing with Alex Cora, but it was the Houston organization. They knows how to cheat. They know what to look for, right? Then Detroit pitcher Tarek Skubal did I think it's called intentional foul or something like that. I think it's an MLB podcast where the Detroit pitcher went on and said, "Yeah, I wish the umps would enforce these base coaches to stay in the box." And they said, "Why?" And he was like, "Because they're trying to look at the grip on the ball, or I think Skubal said they're trying to see things they shouldn't normally be able to see," and highlighted that the Red Sox and the Cleveland Guardians are the two teams where the first and third base coaches are almost like working it like a sideline, is kind of the way it was described. It's very interesting that it's Houston, of all people, that brings this up. And the way I view it, Jay, until the umps tell those guys to stand your ass in the box and don't move, to me, there's nothing wrong here. Atlanta objected to Jazz Chisholm of the Yankees a couple of weeks ago of sending some signals, and one of their coaches inside the dugout, Eddie Perez, was like going like this, telling him, "Be smart, don't do that," whatever. They thought it was, "No, we're going to bean you in the head for doing this." So it turned into a big S show, and it had to be investigated by baseball to make sure nobody was going to throw a Jazz Chisholm's head. But if you're not banging trash cans and you're not doing it from an iPad, this is all gamesmanship.
I agree.
This isn't
100%.
cheating. This is gamesmanship, and it's guys getting on the wambulance and wanting to complain about it.
Alex Cora has been in Massachusetts a long time. Bill Belichick has rubbed off on him. And
no question.
And it's not, sometimes it's about getting every possible advantage within the rule set. Alex Cora is not trying to get suspended for another 162. And before we move on to football, I just want to say one thing to you quickly, because Trevor Story, bro, it's like, we could go back and look at some splits. I could go down a rabbit hole on some of his numbers early in the season, but he's dealt with so many injuries after signing that $140 million contract and gone about his business quietly. And just a couple numbers here, right? Batting average up to 256 right now, which is not nothing given how his season started. 18 home runs, 75 RBIs, 20 stolen bases, hasn't been caught stealing yet. And you talk about leadership, right? It's like Trevor Story, regardless of what the bank account says every week, you have a solid big league player showing up every day right now who has become much more consistent at the plate. I know he strikes out a lot, but I think that's a very underrated component as we talk about the leadership of this team. I think he's really sort of solidified this lineup because he hasn't been a black hole. He's been quite the opposite.
Yeah, I think the problem with Story is relative to the Pyro and Ballyhoo and bringing him in, his first 3 years were the shits. His first year was kind of okay. So 18 bombs, 75 ribbies, and a 256 average are all highs for him in a Red Sox uniform. So it is the best year that the guy has put together. And clearly it really comes down to, I think, for Trevor Story, health. Even in Colorado, he had the 1 year, 2020 was a shortened season, but in Colorado, he was healthy. Here, he has been anything but. And it looks like he's going to play, probably 140, 145, 150 games this year for the Red Sox. He hasn't done that since 2021. So the health is a big part of it. He strikes out too much for my liking. I saw this tweet the other day from John Heyman. Everybody poo-poos batting average, but I believe five of the division leaders are in the top 5 in batting average. So that's got to say something, right? It leads to other things.
Absolutely.
So if Story can just cut down on the strikeouts and get that average up to, say, 275, which was probably pretty close to his average in Colorado, I would take that. But to the point, you're right. He has produced in big volume this year. And if anything, I don't know if he's a leader, but it's a steadying hand out there for all these youngs who have their own $140 million contracts. Yeah. Story can turn around and say, hey, listen, I went through this, and kind of coach him through it, hopefully.
No question. So you got Mad Dog at noon today?
Yes.
Okay, nice. So we're up against it a little bit. Let's talk football a little bit.
Well, yeah, I know that the Patriots had a really good preseason game, number 1. Washington left some guys at home, but the Patriots looked good. They had Pop, Travion Henderson with the big kickoff return. I think they gave the sack to the wrong guy. It was really on Will Campbell because he couldn't get away from, if you go back and watch the play where Maye fumbled, they gave it to the guard Gibson. It was really on our guy Bill Campbell, who had the defense. He had the penetrator, and the guy had his hand inside because you could see Campbell on the. You'll get like a bump call whenever there's a twist, right? So as the tackle, you try to shut down the inside as best you can, but you got to keep the hands off of you because you have to redirect for the looper coming around, and he couldn't do that because he's being held. So. That was a good learning moment, though, for Will Campbell. He needs to go through those things to realize how you have to swat the hand down, or you know what the old trick was? Pinch them. If they're grabbing onto you, pinch their forearm if you can, because at worst it opens their hand up and then you can get away.
I love the little tricks from Gresh from back in the day in the trenches. And I will say that was my favorite moment of the whole game. The bonehead turnover out of Drake Maye, trying to do too much, not taking the sack. Like, that's just the best way to learn, no matter what. You can talk about making mistakes in practice all day long, but like losing an MMA fight, the way that accelerates the growth for some of these athletes. And I think for Drake Maye, that particular turnover, I was thrilled. I said to my wife, it's exactly what I want to have happen. Not Travion Henderson taking it to the house, Drake Maye making a dumb play on the first drive, because we know he's got all the skills. But those are the things, like that's the takeaway for me. Yeah, he's shifty without the ball, but right there. Like Tom Brady would have taken that sack 10 seconds earlier. Do you know what I mean? Because he knows it's dead. He would have cowered down, and we say, what are you doing? So I love
or right here, he would have thrown it away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I was seeing this and seeing Drake Maye stand up and walk off healthy. I was like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And yeah, man, I think, look, I loved what I saw, but I can't say it enough, bro. the Las Vegas Raiders coming in week 1, like this is a very sneaky tough game in my opinion. I think you get this weird veteran feel to this Raiders team. And a lot of people absolutely love New England week 1. As of today, August 13th, not me. No matter how bullish I am on the team.
That's interesting because I'm all over Vrabel's not losing the home opener, especially to the Raiders. I'll tell you this. Get ready for the running backs to eat. And everybody is forgetting about Antonio Gibson. Remember last year, right? Well, last year it was like, boy, he's not a bad number 2. Now, who knows if they keep Gibson? I think they should because to me, all 3 guys would be worthy of running the ball. And I don't know if you can, and this isn't a knock on Henderson. I think with any rookie running back, you have to worry about their sort of longevity during the season. It's 3 games longer. So having another veteran there, I'm big on Henderson, but they're going to have to be judicious in kind of how they use him and make sure that it's in accordance with his health. That's why you have someone, I think, like Gibson, where you know you can break glass in case of emergency, and you have a guy who's a tough runner, and it does end up giving Elliott Wolf a little bit of credibility because that was the running back that he identified they should go out and get.
No question about it. I'm glad you gave him credit there. He deserves it. But yeah, Trevion Henderson ain't getting 22 to 25 carries a game, and that would not be smart. He ain't going to be suiting up week 6 if you do it that way. Hopefully down the road he can become that bell cow. But
you know what? You know what's going to be, Jay, and I'm already sensing it from up in New England. It's going to be a little bit of like that Thunder and Lightning deal where Ramondre will be the bigger Thunder guy, and then you have Henderson who comes in third quarter hitting that outside stretch play with speed, and those guys are tired from trying to tackle 235-pound Ramondre.
And I will say, right, I'm glad you brought up Gibson because for me, right, I am probably one of the biggest Ramondre haters out there, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, he's got to show me something.
Yeah,
hold on to the football.
He's going to have a 1,200-yard season. I think he's
take your action.
I think he's going to have a really good year.
Cody, Ramondre, you're saying 1,200 all-purpose or rushing yards? No,
rushing.
Cody, Ramondre Stevenson, over under 1,200 rushing yards. We will go out. I wonder what that total is. But anyway, I know you got to run, Gresh. Any UFC 319 tickles for you and your boys or what?
Just think of this, Jay. In 18 games, if Ramondre got 70 yards a game, that's 1,260. So when you break it down by game, it's not that much. I see your eyes already moving, being like,
well, hey, I wonder what the line is. Gresh, I'm sure you could get an over/under at like.
I'm sure. 100% sure. Yeah, people are going to be down on Mondre, but I think he's going to be okay. I am very torn on DDP versus Chimaev. My youngest, who is the UFCer, he likes Chimaev. I like DDP. I think this is the fight where if DDP really wants to be a legend, you go beat this guy. But I heard John Jones putting the good mouth on Chimaev and saying, no, people think like I'm this. No, this guy is, Chimaev is the one who is that. If I'm putting money down, I'm betting on the champ as an under. I think from a value standpoint, right? If you put that part of it into if you're just going, I'm picking the winner and that's who I'm just betting on, then that's fine. But a plus 195 value on DDP, a champ who is motivated, admittedly against an animal, but still, I just think the value there is really good on DDP.
Totally agree. And if I'm looking for value here, I would perhaps look at Khamzat Chimaev by finish or by knockout. And I'm looking at DDP by decision or in the 4th or 5th round. I really want Khamzat Chimaev to be a champion. I really do. And I absolutely love Du Plessis as a human. I think he's super interesting as a fighter. But Khamzat Chimaev moves the needle for me more than any fighter in the whole promotion, more than Conor McGregor, more than John Jones. It's something special. If I'm DDP, I would go back and watch how Gilbert Burns competed against Khamzat Chimaev because that's a smaller guy in Burns who gave him everything he could handle. So it'll be really interesting. And also, it's been a little while, right? We haven't seen Chimaev, and a lot of these guys really improve and get better. And we talk about game plans, right? Bilal Muhammad might want to have a take back on the game plan against Jack Della Maddalena. So I think sometimes DDP can be unorthodox. I'll be curious what his game plan is here against the guy who I think is as dangerous as anyone in the whole promotion.
A couple of other of my favorites are fighting on the card. I love Bobby King Green. He's just a fun fighter to watch for me. And Venom Page against Jared Cannonier. That's a sneaky good fight. For those who watched Venom Page in Bellator, everybody knows that guy can go. He can fight. He's so awkward. Is that fair to say about Venom Page?
It is, and it's not negatively connotated. He's fun. I love watching him. Absolutely love watching. One of my favorite fighters to watch. And I will say, I think a little value on Jeff Neal plus 200 against Carlos Prates. Jeff Neal has had such a unique career, and I know Saif Saud pretty well. You know, Jeff Neal is just like, he's banged up all the time, and then he's not making that walk, but he is really, really dangerous. And I think sometimes when some of these, you know, you look at Ignacio Bahamondes, right? You get it up against Rafael Fiziev, a veteran who's been there, back against the wall a little bit. I think maybe a little Prates, you know, getting into a spot where a guy like Jeff Neal sort of has enough to overwhelm him. So I kind of like, I think a little juice on that line there. But other than that, I'm just going to be sitting back and enjoying the show.
Are you going to be consuming the Kelsey Brothers podcast with Taylor Swift today at some point?
No.
Okay.
Sorry.
I just wondered.
But I will say, right, Jason Kelsey, I absolutely love. We talk all about Travis Kelsey and Taylor Swift. He made some comments talking about himself as not a Hall of Fame player, Jason Kelsey. He was like, just all the guys I played around were better than me. He's like, now I think I could do some special things when I had great guys around me, but just unbelievable, the humility and the honesty coming out of Jason Kelsey, you know, and he will end up, yeah, exactly. And he will get that yellow jacket. You can be sure.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I don't know if he goes in first ballot like his brother, but yeah, he goes in, and everybody loves him too. That's the big thing, especially in that room in both baseball and football. All right, folks, for those of you who consume this product each and every week, thank you. Number one, tell a friend. Number two, and then we'll be back. We'll be back next week. I got to take a kid to college next weekend, so I have to go to Pitt, where we'll be driving the youngest down. For when does he start? I think it's like the 25th or something like that or whatever. I never remember college starting in August, but then again, I always went to camp, you know, at the beginning of August. So I had like there was no real like normal lead-in time as a collegiate when you're playing college football. But anyway.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next week with another edition of Gas. We'll have another Patriots game to unpack. The Red Sox are sure to go on a losing streak. Just wait, folks. It's coming. The roller coaster ride continues, and we'll be able to unpack UFC 319. For Grappling Jason, I'm Gresh. I'll see you on Mad Dog Radio in 8 minutes.